I got an interesting question in the comments on one of my previous videos, and I wanted to answer that question in this video. The question is, I'm an entry-level software engineer and I was wondering, how do I make my one-on-ones with my manager more effective? They're bi-weekly and feel like there's not much new stuff going on. And I feel like I'm not taking advantage of this time properly. First of all, thanks for this question, Chowder9576. It's a really good question and I'm happy to answer it. But before I get into it, I've been thinking about doing a Q&A video, ask questions from my audience. And to do that, I need more questions, more really good questions from you. It's really easy to submit a question, just go to this URL and submit your question. Asking a good question really motivates me to continue making these videos. Asking a good question is engaging with what I'm saying. That's the best gift you can give me. Your question can be about anything that's remotely close to software engineering, or it's about me. I've talked about a lot of different topics on this channel. It's all free game. There's no email address required, it's just a Google form, it's anonymous and I'm not collecting any data. The form will be open for a few days, unless of course I get a ton of questions, then maybe I'll close it sooner. And if I don't get enough questions, the Q&A video won't happen just yet. I'm still a really small channel and I have no clue the amount of responses I might get. We'll see what happens. Now let me answer the question. How do I make the one-on-ones with my manager more effective? And first, I want to touch upon intent. When your one-on-ones with your manager are not effective, when you're feeling it's not helping you, then in 99% of the cases, you can assume that it's not malice. Your manager is not evil, your manager doesn't hate you. They want to help you, but they're probably struggling. Maybe they don't know how to coach. Maybe they're very insecure. Maybe they were never trained in coaching themselves. Or maybe they're very stressed and just don't have the mind space for it. Or maybe they're a very dominant personality and they have a lot of trouble to empathize with your situation, but they're actually trying. My first recommendation is to assume that your manager has positive intent. There's no evil. This person is trying to do the best they can. It's just not working out yet right now. So to make this professional relationship work, you have to take the first step. You have to take some kind of control to make it work. Approach number 1, have the meta conversation. This is a very direct approach where you would go to your manager and you would say how you feel. And you could do this in a careful way, like saying, hey, I don't think we're getting as much out of these meetings as I would want to. What do you think? What are your thoughts? Or you could start with an ID. Hey, if we do this from now on, I think we can get a bit more out of our regular one-on-ones. What do you think? To make this work, you have to prepare that you're going to have this conversation. You have to think about what you're going to say, what words you're going to choose so that you won't stumble, or if you're a bit afraid to bring up this topic, because this is quite a direct approach, there are other approaches to this, then, preparation is key here. As an icebreaker, you could start with asking a question. How, for example, they would like to structure this meeting, how they see this meeting. And after that, you could tell your manager what you want from them, what you would like to see in this meeting. If you are looking more for somebody who is a coach, who doesn't give you as much input in terms of information, but mainly listens to you and every now and then asks you a really good question to trigger you, that is the kind of thing that you could ask from your manager. And if you think it applies to your manager, you can ensure them that you can handle some tough love. You're looking for some feedback. You're looking for somebody to be honest to you, to show you the mirror of what you're actually doing so that they can point out your blind spot. If you ask for this kind of trigger, then maybe your manager will be able to give you more input. But depending on what kind of relationship you have with your manager, depending on what kind of personality types you both are, this may be a very scary thing to do. This may be too difficult, it may be too confronting, and your relationship may not be ready for this. And that is okay. The next tip I have may be more up your alley. Approach number 2, taking charge. This is a more indirect approach where you slowly start to change the contents of the meeting, where you slowly start to influence what you're actually talking about with your manager. Throughout the week, each time you run into something, immediately write it down. And a few hours before the meeting that you have bi-weekly or weekly, think about it. Go sit down for an hour and think about all the things that have happened in the last week or in the last 2 weeks. Think about what you want to discuss with your manager, how they can help you improve your week, how they can take your frustrations away, how they can take your problems away, because they are a manager, they can make certain decisions that you actually can't. They have a certain power that you can literally ask for. if you know what questions you want answered before the meeting starts, and if you know what situations that have happened you want their thoughts on, then you are very well prepared to have a successful meeting. I personally like the format of this is the situation, this is what happened, this is what I did, what are your thoughts? And if you don't get enough response or not specific enough answers, then you can follow up with what would you have done? Or what would you like me to do in a future similar situation? Another way is to ask questions about your goals. You could ask, hey, I would like to achieve this. I have tried that and that already. What do you think my next step should be? And for this to work, you need to have your goals ready. You need to come prepared, just like with the previous point. And yet another way to approach it is to bring it to the level of emotion. But to basically ask the same question. Hey, I'm frustrated by this thing that keeps happening or happened a lot of times during this sprint and it's really bumming me out. How would you approach it? How would you solve this problem? I don't know where to go from here. The approach here is to shape a secret agenda around your development needs and just have a conversation about those. You can steer, you can direct the conversation by asking questions. If the problem is that your one-on-ones are currently filled with operational issues or project issues and they're not as effective, and that's the reason you think they're not effective, then you need to come up with the alternative content. You need to prepare it and just start talking about that, start asking questions about it, and then the answers will come, then the content will slowly change over time. Talking about your high-level goals should not happen every meeting. It is okay to sometimes zoom into the day-to-day, to the operational issues. You also need coaching on that. But it is okay to occasionally steer the conversation towards your long-term career planning. That is a topic that does need talking about. Approach number 3, ask for feedback. On this channel, I've talked many times about asking for feedback, and also in a manager-employee relationship, I think it's valuable to ask for feedback. But if you want somebody to be your coach, don't ask for feedback every week. This is more of a quarterly thing. Coaching is very different from feedback. Feedback can be a longer form thing where you receive a bunch of input which you then have to think about and have to process a bit. Whereas coaching is you are having your thought process and your coach is subtly steering you in the right direction by asking a few questions here and there. But that's really a different process. But if you're asking for feedback, there's many forms in which you can do this. I'll show 3. If you think about the last few months, what do you think I should improve in how I do my job? Or the more formal, can you think of one thing I should start doing, one thing I should stop doing, and one thing I should continue doing? Or the simpler, can you think of a strength and a weakness for me? The thing with feedback is that people might not come up with the whole story. Sometimes if you ask them for a strength and a weakness, they only give you the strength and not the weakness. Why do you think that is? That's usually because they think it's uncomfortable to give you this feedback, or they think they might accidentally hurt you and they don't want to hurt you with feedback. They think maybe I'll come across as too harsh. That's not what I want. And the solution here is to persist, to reaffirm, to tell them, hey, I can handle it. I really need you to point out my blind spots. They are my blind spots. I really cannot see them myself. Can you please help me with this? And my last tip is positive reinforcement. This is not an approach you can take like the previous ones, but it is something to do on the side. It's just a good idea in general. Positive reinforcement, you can think of it as giving strategic compliments. By giving somebody a compliment in the right time, in the right moment, you're slowly influencing the behavior of the other. As humans, we're all hardwired to please others, and giving a compliment will give somebody a tiny shot of dopamine. And that means that it's more likely that the person you gave a compliment will show that behavior again, because that's what got them this shot of dopamine. That's how this works. The right compliment at the right time can be very powerful. And it can be very simple to do this. Thanks for making time for me. Or when somebody gave you a good tip that you're going to use, be honest and tell them, thank you, this is really helping me. I can start using this right away. Or, these conversations are really helping me. I'm looking forward to the next one. This may sound very silly, but by giving a compliment, you are motivating the other to show more of that behavior. Giving compliments will not improve your current meetings, but it will slowly start improving your future meetings. Don't think of giving compliments as manipulation. Don't think of it as negative. Think of it as expressing, in a way, what you want to see more of. And that's it. I hope this was helpful. I hope I answered the question. If you have any thoughts, please leave a comment and subscribe. Thank you very much for watching.